Details close-up, reconstituting and possessing manuscripts in the zoomify revolution. While the word zoom has recently taken on new meaning, my presentation today will center upon the notion of zooming in, a technique used in cinematography as a process of scaling to bring out detail and to focus upon an area of interest by moving close up. An invention of the silent film era, the zoomed-in close-up, when new, was startling and disjointed to viewing audiences initially. Viewers were required to make for themselves the sense of continuity between frame jumps, from full scene images to detailed close-ups and back again. Like the devotional half-lengths of Simon Marmion, scaling up creates intimacy and enables the viewer to connect more directly with the object of vision. The close-up is a form of disambiguation, as it draws attention to a region of narrative interest by framing it tightly and cropping out other regions of a larger field. That process of disambiguation can connote a sense of a heightened reality by its greater immediacy to the eye. In film, the extreme close-up can be alternately voyeuristic, as explored by Michael Crichton in a film of the same name, or shocking and emotionally charged, as in Hitchcock's use of the technique on Janet Leigh in his film Psycho. And in scientific studies, scanning electron microscopes images can be as dramatic as they are mystifying, as they show unseen worlds in unfathomable detail. As a conservator of manuscripts, one of my primary modes of studying these objects is through a microscope. Recently, I have been struck by how, as digital imaging technologies have improved over the last 20 plus years, the level of detail achievable with zoomify's ability to magnify, has become nearly equivalent to what one might see when viewing through a microscope at low power. Now anyone can zoom into particular features previously recognized only by conservators and others working with magnification, like the legibility of the micrographic text that appears in the small roundel at the bottom of the folio, or the compass points used to delineate halos. And at the same time, the digital microscopes and capture software have continued to improve conservators' ability to zoom in well beyond the limits of zoomify, for instance, to image a reflective surface glaze on the dragonfly's wing, or to identify the constituency of a gold paint or the presence of Swiss gold. In doing so, I am reminded, and I often think about, one of my favorite artist books, that is Scheherazade by Janet Zweig, in which a Xerox text is enlarged as a flipbook to zoom in and find new texts within the interstices of individual letter forms ad infinitum. For me, this work serves as a visual metaphor that conveys our goal in researching manuscripts, that is, to gain greater purchase on their fundamental material natures. As noted by Michael Camille in his essay on the Très Richer, Walter Benjamin saw the photographic close-up as revolutionary in its, quote, lowerings and liftings, its interruptions and isolations, its extensions and accelerations, and its enlargements and reductions, unquote. For Camille, the close-up offers an experience better than the original, while at the same time they are mystifying because they magnify, quote, to transcendent proportions the fetish of the brushstroke by fragmenting the manuscript into a collage of vastly different scales, details, and scholarly viewpoints, unquote. Camille saw close-up details as, quote, reconstituting the page for the obsessive gaze of realistic detail, unquote. Bringing Camille's comments into the present zoomify moment, his observations that reproductive technologies not only shift the emphasis of an object's aura, citing Benjamin, and also that the magic of technology, here zoomify, can replicate that aura, unquote. Thanks to their digital high-resolution avatars, manuscripts are revitalized, resituated, and reconstituted by the detail close-up enabled by zoomify. Jean Epstein's essay, Magnification, considered what he called the cyclopean art of the close-up detail image and likened it to, quote, the drama of the microscope. For Epstein, quote, the close-up is drama in high gear. It is an intensifying agent that modifies by the impact of proximity, unquote. And by its ability to limit and direct attention, the close-up creates a sensory limit in which, quote, everything else is barred as it creates a hypnosis far more violent than reading, unquote. As Zoomify demands use, it creates something akin to the drama of the microscope. And as the minute dramaturgy of its literal tiling and collaging is amplified, the zoomified detail provides a privileged site of access that focuses the viewer's attentions while performing what film theorist Marianne Doan has called, quote, a radically defamiliarized alterity. The close-up simultaneously aligns sight with mental attention as it simulates and enhances vision. Doan also returns to Benjamin, citing his notion of the close-up as expressing a desire for closeness, to get hold of an object and to possess it like a commodity, which is where aura resides. The close-up can also be a critique, acting like a manacle or a pointing finger, indexical to the whole from which it was extracted. And as Sergei Eisenstein argued, the close-up renders things objective, as is evidenced by its prevalence in scientific imaging. It embraces technical reproducibility and becomes an epistemological tool that empowers the spectator as an analyst of meaning. And what we're seeing here is the underdrawing that's visible through the paint layer, as well as the fetishized brushstroke. So in film, the close-up is indissociable from its temporal continuity and thus lacks autonomy because it is context dependent. But as we've just have seen, the detail image depends on the totality of the full page view for its functionality, but can also stand alone as a detail image. Yet, as Daniel Arras has observed, quote, the detail risks being catastrophic to the whole as it dislodges our view and way of seeing. If the microscope detail creates a moment that troubles the object, this troubling, quote, enigma is eventually resolved as the initial surprise is effaced, according to Arras. The detail is a new instantiation of an additional register that is latent in the overall page view. Thus, the message of the detail is more particularized and conveys something different from the whole work. And in this instance, the detail speaks, of course, to the object's fragility. Zoomify and digital imaging practices are sites of performance. In describing the performativity that adheres to digital media, Johanna Drucker has outlined the properties of digital materiality as, quote, that they are not fixed essences, but capabilities, performative and potential, provocative and suggestive, alive and distinct in each instance of use. Thus, quote, an object is produced as an effect of a dynamic relationship between a provocation of the object's characteristics and an interpretive process. Drucker's notion of performativity applies to Zoomify's functionality. As a format for deep zooming into high-resolution images, Zoomify operates by dicing an image into many tiles, as in a mosaic, and reconstituting them as the user interacts with the file. As the Zoomify function breaks down the initial resistance of the digital page view, the close-up detail elicits a surprise and garners a sense of progressive discovery and revelation. Yet, as Prescott and Hughes have rightly said, quote, the questions we commonly asked about manuscripts requires many different views and cannot be satisfied with a single image. My own photographs taken through the microscope are a case in point. For my provocations of manuscript media are unique to my own performance with the camera and the microscope, in which I manipulate the lighting angle and the position of the object to best elicit what I perceive. They do not conform to a standardized setup or protocol, but changing configuration to best represent the material characteristics of an area of study. My images are highly subjective as they instantiate my own personalized hypothetical gaze in the sense that they represent my interpretation of an illuminator's materials and its stratigraphy. In the imaging studio, dialogical performances also occur as the photographer takes multiple images, which will be merged and reinterpreted to create the digital avatar the user sees on the Getty website. The multiplicity of shots are taken of each page by Getty photographer Kayla Key, one for accurate color rendering of the manuscript's hues, which necessarily kills all the reflectance of the metals, while by a second series of images using a different lighting setup to capture the reflectance of gold and silver. Where I might point out areas I've previously noticed under the microscope, which the initial shots don't capture, Kayla responds by using reflector cards, as she holds here, to elicit any latent sparkle of partially oxidized silver in the water, as you can see, or to better capture finely painted gold highlights in the garment and other details. This might result in a half dozen shots that each teases out the reflection of the metallic materials used in different areas of the page. Once the in-studio imaging is complete, these multiple images from each folio are digitally merged in Photoshop by imaging specialist Johanna Herrera during a post-production process. Again, hidden hours of work rarely recognized to create an overall digital rendering of the folio that best represents all aspects of the original, the color of the parchment and pigments, and the reflectivity of the metals, all in a single digital file. The accuracy of this final rendering is then checked against the original manuscript on repeated occasions in a process of color checking that gets final review and approval by the curator. For all involved, our performances are iterative and interpretive at every stage, while they remain invisible to the viewer. But what about the interactive performance of the reader-viewer who studies and downloads these images on our institutional websites, or for that matter, takes iPhone details of objects in manuscript reading rooms? As digitized manuscripts allow the viewer to change the scale of an image, Zoomify's performativity wants immersive experience and thus affects and informs our interactions with the digital image. Given their often abstracted, sometimes color-field nature, I've wondered whether Zoomify image details appeal to a postmodern vision that delights in the gestalt of the abstract. Do we seek in them something more immersive than merely what they reveal about facture, stages of execution, and materiality? I ask because I have been struck by the phenomenon of recent touring exhibition spaces like the Van Gogh Experience, now in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Why do people want to be in a space where the swirls from Van Gogh's Starry Night are projected onto their bodies? Perhaps these immersive experiences appeal in the same way that I find myself immersed when studying manuscript surfaces and stratigraphy under the microscope. Both are embodied interactions, but as Sven Berkutz has warned, digital media technologies can be anti-contextual, as, quote, every lateral attainment is purchased with a sacrifice of depth in a, quote, synchronic enterprise that is susceptible to collage, not as a depth phenomenon, unquote. The Van Gogh Experience is such a surface phenomenon, wanting to be something deeper as it fails to gain any kind of purchase on the historical Van Gogh. By contrast, the zoomified close-up detail and the microscope image both aim to add depth to the otherwise flat collage of the digitized manuscripts. Details perform eyewitness reports that are as subjective as they are mutable, like details made on our cell phones and shared on social media. Each is a new performance and experience of the original object. Together, they create new object readings, interpretations, and narratives as our details try to possess and reconstitute the ever-changing representation of the digital cultural object. And here, of course, I'm fascinated by the tooling work in the gold that shifts almost like a moire pattern as you move in front of it. These performances are a mode of participatory reading and viewing as they negotiate with the object itself and its avatar, aligning with late medieval reading practices. As Heather Blatt has argued, the digital reader-viewer participates, and I would add, by zooming in and creating details of the manuscript's features. These dynamic and participatory performances are interpretive acts that matter to the object. That's Heather Blatt's word, that it matters to the object, which is really intriguing. And what it means is that by being situated in this way, we come to better appreciate how the user becomes a maker, as in Johanna Drucker's formulation. So what do you zoom in on, and what matters to you? How does the detail image redirect your own inquiry? And what does the detail want, and what does the detail do? As features are revealed that are not well articulated or remain invisible in standard digitized page views, what then happens in this moment of privilege when we see the previously unseen? Is this where the aura lies? As zoomify's performance offers levels of enhanced accessibility, details become experience and practice. They communicate the incommunicable, and they create a heightened perception of the surface as they instantiate new understandings of the whole. While each observer and imaging campaign, whether in the imaging studio, under the microscope, on our iPhones, or with Zoomify, we literally re-image and reimagine the object in ways that get closer to our sensory experience of the performativity of their media. As we seek more immersive experiences of the digital cultural object, we must improve the depth phenomena of the manuscript experience as we try to possess and reconstitute manuscripts to gain greater purchase on the past. Thank you.